Okay. Got it. Any questions with regards to that? That's pretty basic, but you know what? Never be afraid to ask questions because, even when a question comes to me technically, there are times that I still have to go back and look at it because I can't remember everything. And with times and how they're changing, every little scenario can change just by a little bit. And it's not always book read as it used to be. So that's understanding title insurance. The two typical title policies are the owner's policy and the lender's policy, as you all know. Okay. With the differences between commercial and residential. Residential is pretty by rote, pretty easy. You got your encumbrances from prior, liens and encumbrances from prior. You're looking at the typical easements and the CC&Rs. But when it comes to commercial, because of the higher liabilities, we take a little bit more of a careful look, wanting to make sure that there are not encroachments, easements that appear, buildings are on them, different documents that are in commercial deals. There's a lot of miscellaneous documents that go of record. Some have major effects on title. Some are just information purposes, and lenders will put those kind of documents of record just to secure their liens. So the number one thing is 90% of the time, if not all the time, commercial transactions are higher in liability. So there's more at stake. All right. So when we go into doing the research on a commercial piece of property, there is a little bit more studying that goes along. The key thing to looking at a prelim and knowing what's on your property, and it's real simple actually, is reading your document. Most of the codes that are shown on a prelim are boilerplate documents. But on a commercial piece, you might want to read the different documents. They're all entitled differently, and it's our job as a title company just to report of what's of record, not to interpret them, but to put them of record so that you as an agent or a broker or a buyer, seller can read exactly what's affecting the property. And at that point, if you have questions, then you come to us and we'll do our best to interpret or guide you in a direction that may be of concern to you.
We have one question.
Yes.
It's Cindy. So first of all, I just want to just clarify that we don't have any commercial agents in the room right now. So we can probably just kind of talk residential for the most part. But
okay.
Secondly, I was wondering if you can kind of walk us through what the process is, what you guys look for in title, because I bet you none of us read our prelims until we have to, until we hear that there's a problem. And at what point does that problem get discovered? is why I asked, what's kind of the process on your end when you're reviewing,
sure.
Are you reviewing for and things like that?
Okay, well, that makes it a little simpler. Our basic process, okay, is once the order opens, we have database programs that allow us to research the property. We normally go back to the point of the last insurance or when the last sale went on, and we go forward. Now, our people, our plant team, our production team is also trained to look prior to look before the prior insurance to make sure that any liens, encumbrances, meaning most of the times deed of trust, okay, that are secured. We look for open deeds of trust. So that's one of the first things we look for. The other thing that we look for is the vesting and making sure that it chains out. In other words, it goes from A to B, B to C, C to D. And if there's anything that catches our eye, we will point it out on the prelim. A good example is an uninsured grantee. So you've got a John Doe going to John Doe trust. Now that's pretty typical that they'll go from themselves into the trust. But there are times that you'll find deeds that have off the wall, people that are going in between. At that point, we will question what that is. And we will want, especially today, in today's world, we'll want clarification that the original owner, John Doe, or John Smith, was aware that there is a deed that recorded in between yesterday and today. And they're getting ready for their sale. This is happening more and more now today, especially with the baby boomers. There are a lot of baby boomers that have owned their property for many years. And all of a sudden you see this random deed document conveying their property into a random name. So it is our job to notice those things. Now, it's not our job to interpret them or define exactly what they are, but it is definitely our job to point it out. And we need to question it before we ensure the new owner that title is passed correctly. This is one of the bigger problems that's happening today, just so you know. And the other thing is children coming in and taking over their elderly parents' property without really any proper documentation. They automatically assume because they're the children that they can come in and deed to themselves. Trusts are becoming not an issue, but they are something we have to understand, and we have to study them and review them to make sure that they're conveying properly. So that's one of the things. We go into the vestings or the ownership of the property to make sure that it's been conveyed properly to date, so that we can ensure your new buyer their position and that they have 100% clear interest in the property. We again, pardon me?
I have a question. How much
Yes.
fraudulent transfers are you seeing? Because I've heard that's on the rise.
Say one more time, sorry.
How many fraudulent transfers are you seeing?
Well, you know what? Fraudulent is open for interpretation, okay? Because the first thing people say is it's fraudulent. And a lot of people are saying it's fraudulent. I didn't know that was there. And then probably about 50% of the time, they knew about it. They just didn't understand it. But that situation coming up now is more than 50% of the time. It's coming up a lot, okay? So what we didn't have to do 20 years ago, we're having to do today. We're having to really watch properties that have been owned for quite a few years, okay? And then all of a sudden you've got random documentation. And even if you don't have random documentation, as the transaction is happening, what we have to do is really study that the actual sellers know what they're doing, okay? And we go as far today as getting identifications for the people that are signing. That's happening a lot. And you probably run across it where the title company wants an ID. We want to know that the current owners of the properties are still around and they are very aware of what's going on. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I'm wondering, is there any way for anyone to protect their title?
You know what? That's been asked before. There is nothing. I mean, you're gonna have these random companies that are advertising. We can watch this and we can do this. And honestly, those are literally a ripoff. Okay, because there are thousands and thousands of document recording daily. And unless that company is willing to watch every single piece of property, there really isn't a way, okay? Other than, well, you put your property in trust. That's what you have a title company for. You know what I'm saying? If there's gonna be a sale, they're the ones that say, hey, wait a minute, this has happened, okay? There's almost nothing you can do to watch it on a daily basis, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So does that, are you talking about just transferring the title versus like someone sticking a lien on there that you maybe supposedly weren't aware of?
Okay, so other than title, what did you say?
I said, are you talking about just transferring the actual ownership of the property by unwittingly, or are you also talking about people putting liens on the property?
Oh, people are putting liens on properties also. It's usually children are family members. Okay, but before they do that, they have to convey the property into their names. Okay, so it's with everything today.
And then we have one more question too.
Yes,
Hi, Nona.
hi,
Hi, I have a client whose mom owns a property in Arizona and she's in her mom's will, but they've decided, her mom decided there's a lien on it. It has a loan, a $25,000 loan still on her mortgage. They want to put the title into her daughter's name completely, give her the property now. What's the best way to transfer title?
okay, so mother owns property as an unmarried woman,
Yes,
and she is competent, knows what she's doing.
yes,
Okay, then, you know, my advice would be she deeds the property to her daughter and herself as joint tenants. Now, hear this, okay, this is off the record, all right? The best advice would be from legal counsel.
oh yeah, I
Okay.
told them to go to a lawyer, but I just know, can she sell her the property for $1 and just transfer the title so she doesn't have a tax ramification or?
Well, she could, if she deeds the property to herself and her daughter as joint tenants, and then turns around and deeds to herself, as long as it's family, she shouldn't have to pay transfer tax. It's almost like a gift.
Okay, yeah, she doesn't want to be on the title though, for benefits, so that's why she wants to completely change title to her daughter.
Okay, well, then she could do it. Okay, so here are the things to note. She would gift it, number one, to her daughter. Okay. Secondly is her daughter will want to make sure that the mother, I don't know how old she is, she has all the affidavits and everything that goes along with that. So that come down the line, whether she's refinancing or selling the property, she has proof that the mother knew exactly what she was doing when she did that, because it will be questioned. It should be questioned.
Okay, what proof do you need? Like you go to a lawyer and just have a witness with the lawyer?
Or you have an affidavit, you sign an affidavit, okay, there are uninsured affidavits or an affidavit stating I am aware that I'm signing this over to my daughter. It's notarized, she can have a copy of her ID. That's something that I would accept. You
Okay,
see what I'm saying? So it's also up to every title company and every title officer that's handling the property.
but if you had a lawyer involved, for sure it would be.
Oh, yeah, you shouldn't
Okay.
have a problem.
Okay, great, thank you.
One more question here.
Hi,
Sure.
hi Nona, Christine Wheeler, nice to meet
Hi.
you.
Nice to meet you too.
I have a question regarding, joint tenants right as survivorship when you, that it just doesn't seem possible, but I know it is, that you can break the joint tenancy. One party can break the joint tenancy.
Before someone's deceased, you can break it anytime you want,
You
yes.
know, I think that should be illegal.
No.
That's what joint tenants is for, but anyway, okay. If somebody, if the own the property joint tenants, one party breaks a joint tenancy, then it goes to tenants in common. Correct? Tenants in-
Well,
Or does it still stay, or if you break it and well,
it wouldn't be joint tenancy any longer. It's
Right, so
basically, yeah, it could be assumed tenants in common.
okay, and then, but the other party has to be made aware, right? I mean, what is the procedure? Like, it's a personal thing for me, but like, how would I know, like, other than looking at the title all the time, can someone do that and not notify? Who notifies the other joint tenant party?
Okay, so let's say the property is owned by Christy and Nona as joint tenants.
Yes,
Okay, it depends on who's the one that wants to break the joint tenancy. If I want to break it, okay, that's fine. I would deed out the property. Wow, I could deed out the property, you don't need to know, but I wouldn't be entitled anymore. So what would the benefit be, right? If I wanted to put the property in my name alone, I'd have to have you sign it. Okay,
Right.
so
but
so
Shane,
90, pardon me?
that's my thing is, if you're in joint tenants for right of survivorship, okay, and one person passes away, the other person owns it entire.
Yeah,
That-
automatically
That was
after the,
right, that's your tax planning or that's your idea. But if this person decides, no, I'm going to deed it to, I'm gonna break the joint tenants and deed it to somebody else. Then this person, well, when this person passes away, thinks, oh, I own this property, but hello, surprise, no, you own it half and half again. with
well,
somebody.
that's very true. Okay, so when we search title, if I were to take the property and give it to somebody else, but that means I'm out of title. So there's no benefit for me, but I'm out of title. And if something later on down the line, you wanted to do something with the property, what you're gonna find out, or I die, God forbid, I'm not around anymore, okay? You're gonna think you own the property free and clear, I mean, as yourself, by yourself, they'll do the title, and that's the first thing you'd wanna do. They'd wanna do is search title and confirm, okay? You're gonna find out that 50% of the property is owned by you, and the other 50% of the property is owned by whoever I deeded to. So there would be no way, unless, okay, the other way you would know is when tax bill comes around, okay? Or you'll get some kind of notification. It also depends on who's living in the property, you know, unless you're talking about, you know, there's so many little things to consider, okay? So if there's a new deed, there's gonna be some kind of notification coming in from the tax assessor's office, and it's gonna go to the property in question. All right, so it would depend if you're living there, you know. So, but to answer your immediate question, there really isn't a way for you to know
I know, I
if
don't like,
someone were to do it on the site.
I have to go to another meeting. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have another question, not just about ownership, but I noticed that a lot of times at the end of the loan process, the end of the escrow, sometimes things will pop up like, there was HELOC that never got properly taken care of, or there's solar that now needs to be dealt with. How and when do those get recognized, and what do you do about those?
Okay, honestly, they're shown right on the front of the prelims. They're shown right off the bat when our preliminary title report goes out and goes out to the escrow/lender. Okay, it's there. Okay, we don't, as title, it gets reviewed when we put the prelim out. But a lot of times, the prelims don't get looked at again, and we go back and say, hey, what are you doing with this? Because 9 times out of 10, not even, maybe 50-50, the loans fall through, the transaction falls through. So we don't spend time on them until they come alive, okay? So technically, it's escrow/lender's responsibility to have reviewed that along with the borrower if they get the prelim. So it should come out in the beginning when there's first reviewed, but what happens at the end, you got closing, no one's looked at anything, and that's when title brings those issues up.
Got it.
And actually, most title companies, including ours, we put a review sheet right on the top. And we're saying here, your property is owned by here, your taxes are this is the amount of the deed of trust that's on record, and these are the other issues. So it's right on a review cover sheet.
What kinds of things should agents be looking out for? And that's
Well, you know,
related.
because I've never been an agent, but from what I've seen, I mean, is it really the agent's responsibility? I mean, they can review them. And usually ones that have been around for a while know what to look for. And, you know, they'll look that there's not going to be problem in the vesting and conveying out. They may look at liens of records. I think it depends on how long the agents have been doing this and how much due diligence they want to do for their buyer and its seller.
I think for the most part, they just want to make sure that the deal goes through.
Yes.
So if there's anything, and there's a lot of people who are maybe newer and haven't been around and don't know what they should ask, or, you know, whatever. So
Yes.
I mean, if you have any pointers on that regard, maybe
Well,
ask the lender perhaps to review the prelim.
like escrow. I mean, if there's an escrow on a sale, there's nothing wrong with it. And I actually think that it's the escrow's responsibility or obligation to do this because they've been hired on as the escrow. That I don't think there's anything, but this is my personal opinion. I'm not an agent, so I would not want to overstep here. But there's nothing wrong with the agent saying, okay, I gave you this deal, or you have this deal, did you review, or would you review the prelim and make sure there isn't anything that I need to assist with? And actually, I think it's kind of a good practice, but you know,
That's perfect.
yeah. And then you take it one step further, if they're not getting answers or there's too many questions or there is a question, they shouldn't be afraid to call title. Okay, and title can guide them, but title can't give them, tell them what to do. They can give them the suggestion, and and that would be nice if they kept that in mind. We're there to help you too. Okay, so they could call title also.
Question?
Yes, Nona, I mean, just personally, I feel like if you're an agent, you shouldn't at all tell them what's wrong with the report, because if you miss something, it's a huge liability. I think they should ask you to explain the report or escrow only.
Yes, and I'm not going to disagree with you. But you don't know unless, as an agent, unless you're reviewing it. Do you review it?
I do, but if you somehow miss something, I think that the client just needs to review it with title and escrow, and if they miss something, then that was title and escrow. I mean,
Yes,
it's,
you're correct.
that's not my expertise, so I feel like I don't talk to it. It's just like the lending. I don't go into interest rates or anything about the prelim because it's a liability to me.
Yes, and I agree. I think that's a great point. So it would be up to every agent, you know, what they decide to do. That's why I said most agents don't get involved.
I can actually pull up a sample prelim just to show what our curative review sheet looks like, our clear order.
Okay.
I have an example too, and this is, there's actually something on solar there that pops up immediately. So I think it would just be a good example. Okay, well, never mind. But oops.
I think it's a good idea, you know, that Clearmark will be putting together a sample prelim, and there's always room for future classes if you want, and we can go over these things.
Yeah, there are a few other slides on here that I know that there aren't any commercial agents in here, but I think it would be great to still go over kind of like a compare and contrast, Nona, for this slide. Can you see it?
Yeah, if you go to the commercial items that are typically considered, the next page.
Yes.
Okay, so types of coverage, okay, will also be, all of this is applicable. It can be applicable to residential also. So types of coverage, as I mentioned, let's just stick with the typical coverage for residential is owner's policies, okay, and lender's policies. Taxes, I think taxes, all lenders and most buyers want their taxes up to date by the time that they're closing on their transaction. Survey inspections. Okay, surveys are not usually necessary on residential properties. Okay, maybe you'll get them in the more extensive Malibu properties, but even then they're not, very rarely do we, they're not required by title, by the way. Okay, inspections, just for your information, we will order inspections if a property has just been recently foreclosed. And the biggest reason for that is for possession. We want to make sure that there is no one residing in the properties. Special use, unusual loan documents, that's commercial. Mechanics liens. Mechanics liens can come up in remodels issues. If we're told in advance that it's going to be a remodel job, we will make some mechanic lien requirements for our coverage. In other words, anytime just for your information, when there's construction involved on any kind of piece of property with a shovel, just even showing on the inspection of a property, okay, that can be alarmed for a mechanics lien, because whatever contractor goes on that property can actually put a lien on the property, which will take priority over a lender's deed of trust. So that comes down to even just a shovel being on the property, because that means you have got a contractor that's already started working. Okay, so we won't go too much into that. And endorsements are pretty boilerplate, the normal for lenders. Owners policies, usually there aren't any requested. So that's a real quick go over. Anytime that you want in the future, or even now, if you have any questions regarding any of this, please feel free to ask, or we could do future classes that just focus in on one certain thing.
Nona, one last question. Thank you so much for everything.
You're welcome.
You were saying that you go back and search the ownership to just the last transaction or the last sale of the property. What happens if there's a defect in title resale back? Is your title insurance covering that defect if it actually wasn't?
Well, here's the way title insurance works, okay? Number one, if there is a title policy already in place, let's say to you as the seller, okay, you have already been assurances that your property is free and clear and you have 100% vesting. If we come in and we do a new sale out of you as the seller to a new buyer, and something, if we were to catch it before the new transaction closed, we would have to refer you as a seller back to your prior title company and say, hey, Mr. Seller, there is a problem in your title and you need to approach your title company that insured before so that they can stand behind their policy. However, if we were to insure the new transaction from you, the minute your deed records, your title policy is no longer in force and we take over the issue. We would have to take over.
The defect way back then you're responsible for.
Yes,
Oh,
once
okay.
we issue our policy, your original is out of, is now no longer in force and we have to take over.
But the owner's still covered. That's kind of what I was.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Bottom line.
And what about title, owner's title? I've been in lending for many years, not known anybody to ever buy that, yet we're always obligated to put it on the disclosures. What is it all about?
Having an owner's policy.
Yeah,
Well, number one, as a lender, if you're coming in just for a refinance, okay, it's also an assurance for you that these owners or your borrowers have full title coverage. So that's 50% of the work right there. They have 100% interest. It's already been researched. So you come in with your lenders. Now, it's not to say that we haven't issued lenders policy without owner's coverage, but it's always recommended. It's recommended, period, that an owner of a property has an owner's policy. Okay, does that answer your question?
what is it? What
Oh.
do you get for that?
Okay, for owner's policy, we're giving you the assurance that you have your property free and clear from nothing that's happened in history. We have looked at your history and we have made sure that you have 100% interest in your property. And this is the way it looks per your policy. So that means almost in the same line of the questioning that our last person asked, that means that if there is a defect in title, for instance, there are times where, again, a child will come in and say, hey, wait a minute, I didn't sell this property. This is my parent. Okay. We give you assurances that none of this is going to happen. And it doesn't mean it's not, because we can't guarantee that it's not going to happen. We are just letting you know that we have looked at the history of the property, and from what we have researched and what we can see, you have free and clear property. Okay. And if it does come up, then we have to stand behind your policy and we cover the insured. So it's assurances for you that you have nothing from the past is going to come up and haunt you. Does that explain it a little clearer?
Yeah, still, now I know one buys it though.
So when you say no one buys it, what do you
Yes.
mean by no one buys it?
Well, it always shows up as optional insurance. And nobody ever takes up the option.
Okay, so in a sale, are you talking about a sale?
Yeah,
Okay, so here's my opinion, and it's only my opinion because everybody is so sue happy today. No one will take the position that you must. Okay, so a lender is doing their, in my opinion, the lender is doing their due diligence and saying, okay, owner's policy, they're not even saying it's recommended. They're saying it's optional, but they're not taking themselves completely out of the game. Okay, they're not gonna advise. Just like we wouldn't, although we, we have standards and we have requirements. But I can see where a lender would do that. And 9 times out of 10, they don't take it. But have you ever seen a transaction go through where there wasn't an actual concurrent owners?
It wasn't a-
Concurrent owners.
Meaning an owner's policy issued at the same time.
Yeah,
You have?
yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
I
unless
very
there's something I'm not aware of. I mean, they're all like that. With the lender's policy is required, the owner's policy is not. And
So even on your final disclosures, they're not showing the, I'm not real, I can't say that I'm real familiar with it, but on your final disclosures, do you show all of the escrow costs?
yes,
Huh, interesting. Okay, because I could see where you might not know because you're handling the new loan, the purchase money, and you've got the escrow, and usually you're going through an escrow, aren't you?
yes. Always.
Okay, that would be interesting. Cindy, anytime that if you come across one, I would love to see it.
Okay,
Yeah, sometimes that's the best way to do it. I just take a look and see why there wouldn't have been an owner's. But of course, on title end of it, yeah, I can't even remember the last time, if any, that we've gotten a lender's policy for a purchase that does not have an owner's policy going concurrently.
I have some questions about the endorsements.
Sure.
When are those, like, what exactly are endorsements? When are those usually taken up? Because that is extra. And in what instances is that typical to have endorsements?
Well, in lenders' policies, it is always.
Mhm.
Lenders have their common endorsements, the 100, which covers all CC&Rs.
Mhm.
Okay, you've got the 116, which basically says that this is your property and this is your address. Okay, and then they're all boilerplate. Okay, it's like a list that they have, and if you have CC&Rs, you need to get this endorsement. You have easements, you need to get this endorsement. Most of it, what's happening now, because especially with the newer loan officers, okay, they go with the list, but they're really not knowing what the endorsements cover, because the 100 endorsements that's issued on every lender's policy has all of the coverage that the little endorsements are putting out. So coverage is already built into lender's policy. And then you'll get off the wall endorsements. So did that answer your question?
What are the off the wall endorsements?
Oh, someone will ask us for, let's say you have an oil and gas lease, okay? They'll ask for an endorsement that basically says they're getting assurances that there will not be any entry to that, wherever that oil and gas is, from the top of the property. Okay, though that again is a list, that they're going off of. On single family residence, they're pretty basic. When you get into commercial, it's completely different because lenders are wanting coverages that extend to their loan. And we can go over endorsements every day. It doesn't matter to me. Okay. For you.
pretty much out of time. Does anybody have any last questions? Going once, going twice.
Thanks, Nona.
You're welcome. We can do
Thank
this
you, Nona.
anytime.
We appreciate your time.
Before we really wrap up though, I will pull up a little snippet of our clear order. Just so that you guys can see how, like comprehensive the first sheet of your prelim would look if you were to open up a prelim with us. And this is what Nona was referencing. So it's just a slide from one of our PowerPoints, but this is the clear order on the right, and then feel free, Nona, to jump in if you want to explain it. But we do give it with every resale transaction prelim we generate. we give it a grade from A to D. You'll see how title is vested, the property taxes, if they're paid or not. And then as well as any open deeds of trust or any liens that would prohibit, the close of the transaction. And, to go back on the solar, like it would show up here. We just had, one of our clients, like for his listing, solar popped up immediately. Yeah.
What does a grade mean? I've never seen that.
Yeah, so it depends on what types of liens need to be cured before the end of the transaction. So there's like a little key written here. So A would mean there's no liens on the property. I believe
Oh.
B means that there
It's like
is an
this
open
way.
loan that needs to pay
Also, yeah, like deeds of trust.
that liens. And then D, there'd be a few other curative issues besides that.
So
open
it
deed of
needs to be,
trust.
if it's not A, you're not closing without a B taken care
Mhm.
of. Got it.
Usually if it's a B, it's just normal, standard, payoff of a mortgage. And then if you get it to C, it might be, liens or paperwork, and then D would be a missing piece of paperwork in the chain of title, which usually we can find.
Okay, yeah, cool. So B can close. Yeah, they do. And most things are B's. Okay,
Yeah, typically just with like an open deed of trust that needs to be paid off.
right, which would happen during.
Yeah, so it is really comprehensive, like sometimes prelims can be hefty or there's just a bunch of language in there that's dense. So this is really great where, it would highlight the things that would need to be taken care of. And then like when your prelim is generated and sent to you, your title rep should call and let you know and go over it with you too.
They should go over with the client, not
Mhm.
us.
With-
Run it.
We typically go over it with our agent, like our client. Yeah,
I would want you to directly go over it with my client because I don't want to relay any information you told me correctly and be open for a lawsuit, or miss something.
right. So I guess it is just case by case basis
Yeah.
how you operate,
But you
but
can do that, right?
yeah,
Never our clients.
we typically, like let our clients know like what's going on, just so that they're not totally in the dark.
And from your perspective, you just want to make sure there's no deal killers in there.
Well, no, I don't want the liability because if, let's say you're telling me something and I miss a
No,
point.
of course,
Yeah,
I completely.
yeah,
agree with
I
you.
don't
I'm
want to get
saying-
sued for, oh, Terry Lynn, you didn't tell me that when you explained the title.
Right.
So it's not, I will never, yeah, you can always delegate. Yeah, I'm definitely delegating that.
And our TO, Joe, is always happy to go over prelims too.
Great.
If you want it straight from the horse's mouth, and sometimes with more complicated prelims, I'll reach out to him, so I know for sure that I'm not misreading or missing anything for the same reasons that you just said. So I'm not responsible for ruining someone's life.
Yeah, including your own, right?
Yeah. Yeah, but there's always. It's all, like Nona said, this is information on record, we're not interpreting it, so there's
Right.
less room for error.
Right,
It just has to be read correctly.
right.
Any other questions?
Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
All right, now have a
Thanks,
good
Nona.
one.
Thanks so much.
Okay, everybody, have a good day.
Bye.
All right.
Bye-bye.